Okay. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's staying safe in these crazy times we're living in here. But my name is Jesse, and I'm here to do a presentation on how fungus can help our plastic problem. So just as kind of a brief overview, what it is they've recently discovered that some species of fungus actually have the ability to biodegrade plastic down, which, if we could utilize this, could help our humongous plastic problem that our planet is having in regards to environmental concerns. So without further ado here, I'll just quickly go over exactly what a fungus is and kind of some common characteristics. So they're heterotrophic organisms found in a wide range of environments. We often think of them as mushrooms in this regard, but that's just one type of fungus. Generally, they share the common characteristics of being filamentous, incapable of movement, and have the ability to reproduce sexually or asexually. So they're very hardy organisms that can live in a wide range of environments because of this. They're also believed to be more closely resembling animals than plants, believe it or not, thanks to a common choanoflagellate ancestor. So choanoflagellate cells are sort of these precursor cells that are hypothesized to be linked to the first animals. So if they share a common ancestor cell with that, yeah, they actually, weirdly enough, have more animalistic characteristics than some plants. What does a fungus do? We've sort of talked about this in class. They're vital to the decomposition nutrient cycles in environments. They form mutualistic symbiosis with other plants and animals, and they're used by humans as food, pharmaceuticals, fermentation, and even brewing. So we actually already utilize fungus already for human use here. However, fungal diseases are common in the world and contribute to the decline in health and population of plants, animals, and even humans. And you'd often hear that maybe people contract some sort of fungal growth under their nails or in their skin, one of the downsides of fungus being introduced sort of in environments and even in human use. So before I continue, I'm just going to quickly show you a brief CBC interview here, in which one of the first interviews I could find in which they discovered that fungus could biodegrade plastic here.
Welcome back. Scientists in Britain say fungi could be the key to winning the war on plastic. CBS 4's Maribel Rodriguez has details on the new research coming out of London.
Scientists in the UK are focused on fungi and say it's a forgotten kingdom that is vital to life on Earth.
They're not as pretty as flowers. You don't have them beautifully growing in your garden. But actually, they really are critical for so many things.
A new report on the state of the world's fungi claims the organisms could tackle our planet's problem with plastic. Experts say if the natural properties of fungus can't be harnessed and developed, plastic could be broken down naturally in weeks rather than years.
Of the same species?
The renowned Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in London has the world's biggest collection of dried fungi with more than 1 million specimens. Fungi have provided food and medicine for centuries, but researchers say the curious organisms hold more superpowers.
For new fuels, for cleaning up plastics, for cleaning up radioactive waste.
What's more?
More than 100 researchers from 18 countries worked on the new report that warns climate change is threatening fungi habitat in some parts of the Earth. Experts admit fungi have a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde profile, helping 90% of the world's plants get nutrients, while at the same time doing irreversible damage to some ecosystems.
And around 2,000 new species of fungi are discovered worldwide each year. Last year, some of highlights include finding fungi in dust on an oil painting and a new species lurking under a fingernail. Maribel Rodriguez, CBS 4 News.
So as you can see, we're already sort of looking at fungus in multiple different ways, but the ability to biodegrade plastic within a couple weeks, if we could utilize that properly, would be monumentous in just getting rid of most of the plastics in the world here. So let me just jump back to the slideshow here. There we go. So how does the process actually work of fungus breaking down plastic? Well, many different fungus actually have the ability to biodegrade it, some examples being the Aspergillus, Plectosphaerella, and Geomyces genre of fungus. The method at which fungus breaks down plastic, though, isn't necessarily known or consistent across all genera, but those that have been experimented with do so via an enzymatic mechanisms which causes degradation. So they utilize some form of an enzyme that help break down plastic. So here is just sort of a chart of the types of plastics that we're often dumping into the environment. This chart specifically categorizes the types of plastic, their molecular bonds, and the rate of global annual production from 2016 here. If you'll notice on the top right there, or on the top left there, the one that's stated at 116, those are polyethylene plastics, which is the kind of stuff you'll find in plastic bags and plastic film. So it's kind of the plastics that we dump most often and are often dumped into garbage. So approximately 5 to 13 million metric tons of plastics are dumped into oceans per year, negatively impacting the ecosystems and the health of animals and humans. So this is why we're looking into different alternatives to biodegrade plastic, as we just keep dumping and producing more. So now we're looking into alternative ways to get rid of them, as some plastics either do not biodegrade in the environment at all, or biodegrade so slowly that we might as well just assume they're never going to leave the environment. So a fungus that we're going to be looking at specifically is Aspergillus tubigensis here. So in order for fungus to break down high levels of synthetic polymer, it has to meet certain environmental conditions and conditions have to be met depending on the fungus and the structure of the plastic. So you can't just throw one fungus on a plastic and expect it to biodegrade. There's certain conditions that have to be met. So for Aspergillus tubigensis, they used two methods to do this. The first method was to contain it in an MSM agar dish, MSM being a minimum salt medium, not a lot of salt in the dish there. After the fungal growth had set in 4 days on the plastic, degradation and scarring appeared on the surface of the polymer within 2 weeks. So all it took was a small amount of time for like 2-week period here for it to start biodegrading, which, as you can see in this picture here, it started to eat away around the middle there, with the black part being Aspergillus tubigensis eating away. So that's pretty monumental already. Now the second thing that they did was to introduce it once again into a minimum salt medium liquid, liquid structure this time, with a 2% glucose level. And this resulted in degradation into smaller pieces after a 2-month period. So that strip there eventually broke down to that in about 2 months, which is pretty crazy. So this is just one example of a fungus that they've used, and Aspergillus tubigensis has been experimented with a lot and seems to have a lot of promise in how rapidly it can biodegrade plastics, but there's some problems that come along with it. Just as a general observation, if we needed to biodegrade millions of plastics, we would obviously have to cultivate a lot of fungus in order to do it in a controlled environment, which would mean we'd have to reproduce fungus in massive quantities in order to do it, which could negatively impact some environments depending on if it becomes an invasive species. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But another problem that I had briefly brought up before is that fungus actually has health problems with humans, which Aspergillus tubigensis in particular can have hazard effects on human health, as it's linked to a lot of respiratory problems like cystic fibrosis and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So while it does have some potential to help with the plastic problem here, we do have to consider that there are some health problems and even some environmental problems in having to, I guess, mass produce this much fungus to get rid of plastic. So something that's currently they're working with, they're still trying to figure out, but hopefully within the next few years, they'll figure something out that's a little more environmentally safe and human safe. All right, well, that's been my presentation, and thank you for your time.